Hello, my name is Edwin Commandeur and I'm a business intelligence consultant at Dimensional Insight Netherlands and my topic is advanced dim sum usage. Before I go into an example, I want to tell you something about the dim sum function. The dim sum function is a Spectre function introduced in Diver 717 and it's a so-called dimension function. You can use it for summing values in situations where you do not just want to sum the value for every row. One caveat is that dimension functions are labor intensive and they can impact performance. One other thing is that dimension functions can also be a bit difficult to wrap your head around, so I hope you can follow along. So the example I want to discuss is a clinical lab example where you have clinicians that order laboratory tests for diagnostic decision making, and a clinician may order one or more laboratory tests in one request. And suppose that we want to know how many requests there are in which specific tests are requested together. For example, two specific tests that are requested together in one request. So I've made a very simple example where we have 3 requests and we see that multiple tests were ordered in these 3 requests and that the level of detail of this example is test ID. And suppose that we want to know in which of these requests both test ID 2 and 4 were ordered together. Well, looking at our little example, we can see that in request 1 and 3 both test ID 2 and 4 were ordered together. How would we count this in Diver? Well, one way is to go back to our ETL and for every request that we have, make a list all the test IDs that were ordered in that request, and we make a new column test IDs as the column that I've added here, and then we filter that column to find out in which of the requests both test ID 2 and 4 were ordered together. But suppose that we do not want to go back to our ETL, then we can also do this with a calculation. So I've made a calculation called calc number of requests has 2 and 4, and it uses the dim sum function. So the dim sum function takes an expression that states what to count, and it takes a dimension, which is the level to sum to. So in this case, we want to know the number of requests in which both test ID 2 and 4 were requested together, so our level to sum to is request. And if we look a bit closer at our expression, which states what to count, then we can see that this is an if statement with some criteria in there, and if both some value for test ID is 2 and some value for test ID is 4 hold true, because of the AND statement, then we count 1, then we sum 1, and if either of these criteria is false, then we count 0, or add 0 to the sum. So sum is a Spectre predicate function that returns true if the condition is true on at least one row. How does this work? Well, we want to know we want to have a dim sum at the level of request, and the Spectre engine will create side tables under the hood. So if we look at the level of request and then look at request 2, for example, then we can find out that there are multiple records for request 2, namely for test ID 1, 2 and 5. And for this side table, we can evaluate our dim sum expression, and we can check if some value for test ID is 2, which is actually true, and if some value for test ID is 4, which is false for request 2. So we add 0 to our dim sum. So here is a dive on request level where we can see that our calculation yields 1 for request 1 and 3 and 0 for request 2. And the nice thing about the dim sum function is that if we dive on different dimensions in our data set, that it then will also give the expected result. So if we dive on year, then we see the calculation of the number of requests that has 2 and 4. actually sums to 2. And if we dive into the details, we can see that this is because of request 1 and 3. An additional thing is that we can add a filter for efficiency. So requests that do not have test ID 2 or 4 will never match the criteria that we have in our dim sum expression. So we can add a filter there to filter these records out beforehand. Finally, my colleague Jan-Willem Arenshorst also gave an example of explained an example of the dim sum function in Knowledge Forum episode number 23 in a presentation called Summing Values Using Spectre Functions. And there he showed an example where you can use the dim sum function if you have a summary that's at a different level of detail than your data set. And I encourage you to watch his presentation also for more for an extra use case of the dim sum function. If you like to know more about the dim sum function, then you can visit the Workbench help at this short URL. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you for your attention.